Well, look who rose from the dead. What's going on, guys? EvilNinja99 here. It's been a while, obviously. But we're gonna do a good old-fashioned video today where I talk to you at length about stuff that doesn't matter to most people, but I need to vent to somebody about something as mundane as smartphones. So this is how I'm doing it. Please excuse anything that goes wrong in this video visually or auditorily. I'm obviously a little bit rusty. So to sum up this video from the jump, if you don't want to watch me talk aimlessly for another 20 minutes, I've upgraded my Essential phone to a ZTE Axon 10 Pro. We'll just call it Axon 10 from this point forward. I've gotten both phones for $300 or less. The Axon 10 was $300 exactly with no tax because it was through B&H, which is a godsend when it comes to saving money on paying tax. And I got the Essential phone, of course, during Prime Day for $250. This has served me kind of well. Like, it had a couple of glaring issues, namely the ceramic sort of hindering the cell reception quality, and the kind of jerky display in terms of touch response. Presumably a design compromising measure because they couldn't get a better quality touch panel for a device that was built like this, at least in 2017. So it was kind of ahead of its time design-wise, but practicality-wise, it fell pretty short. That's not why I upgraded, though. I upgraded because the digitizer was separating from the chassis. So if I allow the force of gravity to take hold of this device, you'll see that the screen is separating, and if I do it anymore, it will legit come off the phone. So let's leave it at that. This phone is falling apart, physically speaking. So I knew I was going to have to upgrade inevitably. Then a deal that was too good to pass up came by in the form of a $300 Snapdragon 855 equipped device, which was the Axon 10, or is the Axon 10. There are quite a few compromises with the phone, but again, for $300, it punches well above its weight spec-wise, and most of my contentions with it are definitely dismissible in the $300 price range. So the Essential phone has served me well, and I will say that the Essential phone is still a better built phone than the Axon 10 is. And the Essential phone is still a better built phone than a good percentage of smartphones released today in any price tier. It's just that phones shouldn't be made out of ceramic, because cell connectivity, that's kind of integral. I think it's a nice, beautiful, if I may be a bit hyperbolic, piece of jewelry to just gawk at. This is one of my favorite design back pieces on any smartphone going into 2021. I love the brandless design. Like, this is so gorgeous. It's not in focus, of course, but you can even tell out of focus. It's arguably prettier out of focus. This is still such a beautiful phone. It's too bad that there were so many compromises that came with such a groundbreaking design. You have to keep in mind, this was the first mainstream phone released with a notch. So it did have to cut a few corners to have it come in this size, especially from a company that was very fledgling and, as we would come to know, was not sustainable. But that's my little eulogy to the Essential phone. I'll still have it to keep because I can't stop looking at it from time to time. So we'll keep it. And by we, I mean me. I'm trying to pretend like this is like a family channel. It kind of is, because there are like 7 people who are going to watch this, so it might as well be a blood unrelated family channel, just with a bit more profanity. Anyway, this is the Axon 10, or the ZTE Axon 10 Pro. Where do I begin? So I got it. This was like the last day of July, like late July. So I think the 25th or something. It was on sale. This phone retailed for, I think, $550. For the price, I mean, it was a fine OnePlus alternative, but there was little reason to buy it over, say, the OnePlus 7T, I think, was the comparable phone at the time. I believe the primary advantage the Axon 10 had over the OnePlus 7T at $550 was that the Axon 10 had wireless charging support, and the 7T did not. OnePlus was still skimping on wireless charging for their phones. And I believe the OnePlus 8 finally has wireless charging. I could be wrong there too. So I do like the design of this phone quite a bit. It only comes in blue, which is a bit odd, but it's fine because it's a nice looking color. It is reflective because it is made of glass or some glass alloy, because it's not necessarily the most premium feeling phone in the world. My Essential phone definitely feels more premium in the hand. But it's not a bad feeling phone, and it's definitely not a bad looking phone. It does not have a headphone jack, unfortunately, but whatever at this point. So you might be asking, okay, you got this for $300. Why didn't you get the 4A, right? Well, if you're keeping a mental timeline in your head, because of course we're all multitasking while watching someone drone on about their phone, you'll know that the Pixel 4a wasn't announced until like early August. I don't remember the exact day. Like, these dates are escaping me now. I used to have like a routine of remembering dates of hardware releases and stuff. That's just, I've just deprioritized that from my life entirely. But the rundown is Google announced the 4A like literal days after I ordered the Axon 10. Because I was under the impression that the 4A was going to be announced in like October or something, because they were already taking so long to announce the thing after it's been rumored for almost a year, that I just thought they're probably just going to announce it with the Pixel 5, because they might as well. What's the point of doing a stilted, like Apple like September, October thing just for the 4A? Well, turns out they pretty much did that. That's not to say I regret getting the Axon 10, because it still is a more powerful phone with a better chipset. I mean, the 855 still runs, small circles, let's say. Not like actual circles, but like, let's say semicircles around the 730. So and this also has a larger display. That being said, the 4A is the best new phone you can get for $350. I would even wager to save $400, even $450. The 4A is a really good phone. And if I did not get the Axon 10, I would be debating which one to get, even if the 4A was weaker in quite a few areas. It still has a better camera than the Axon 10 does. The software support is infinitely better. And I think that's what we're going to spend a good portion of this video talking about. So I'm well aware that there aren't many people watching this video, period. And there are even fewer people, far fewer people, who are considering getting an Axon 10 to begin with. This is just a mini vlog update for the most part. But you can still get the Axon 10 for $350 on BH Photo Video, which is still a decent price, but it's also the same price as the 4A is. But then again, the 4A is experiencing slight availability issues, so if you need a phone in like an emergency case scenario and you only have $350 to spend, this should be your runner-up choice, especially given the availability issues. Once the 4A's availability issues are sorted out, I don't think you should get this over the 4A, because it's more of a headache than the 4A is. So when the Axon 10 was released, it could hold its own against other budget flagship phones, namely the 7T, with the exception of the software. It frustrates me when vendors ship a near stock version of Android but butcher a couple of things in the software to make it their own proprietary software, but at the same time make it so close to stock Android that you wonder why they even bothered in the first place if they were just going to make it an inferior version of near stock Android. Because OnePlus and Motorola ship near stock versions of Android, but they have their own improvements to the software that deem the slight modifications justifiable. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of Oxygen OS. It is more feature inclusive, but I do think the UI is slightly worse than what Google offers with AOSP Android and Pixel UI, which in my mind are close enough to be negligibly distinguishable. Motorola has their Moto Action stuff, like a flick of the wrist to invoke the camera. Moto's always on display is the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. But ZTE adds like a few quirky UI inclusions, like the font's a bit off. The settings app looks like it came from some third-rate vendor OS, which in actuality it did. So it was just kind of janky, I think is the best way to describe it. And it's not something I foresaw maintaining. Like, I got the phone. It was nice being back on an OLED display again, since the Essential phone that I had an LCD display, not even that great of an LCD display, especially with regard to the touch panel. So it was nice going back to OLED. And it was nice having the ability to have an always-on display back. Granted, that was with the ROM I flashed, or the system image more specifically. But it was nice having the benefit of OLED in my hand again. And to me, OLED is, I think, the most fundamental feature in a smartphone going forward, because not all smartphones, particularly budget smartphones, have OLED displays, even if they're becoming more and more common. So that was my favorite thing about the Axon 10. And keep in mind that the display on the Axon 10 is not even that good. I've noticed minor black crush issues with my display in particular. I'm sure it's not available on all Axon 10s, but I'm sure quality control is not a priority with Axon 10s or ZTE's repertoire of smartphones in general. It also suffers from moderate graininess. That is probably more annoying to me than the black crush, just because the black crush, I'm used to sort of uneven, bleedy LCDs. And to me, it's visually similar enough insofar as it's a comparably evident problem. So it's not that big of a deal for me, especially again at $300. And if you watch my Essential phone review from a while ago, I had so many shortcomings with that phone, but I always came back to the price that I paid for it. And to me, I feel better having spent $300 on this over paying $900 for a OnePlus 8 Pro, even though that phone is better in pretty much every way. It's not 3 times better to me. I get 85% of the experience for 30-something% of the cost. And I think that's a pretty elementary way of looking at it, but it's one that makes the most sense to me, especially since I don't have bags of money lying around. Returning back to the display, it's a mediocre OLED, but it's an OLED nonetheless, so to me it's better than an LCD of any type on a phone. It's 60 Hertz, that's another shortcoming, again, $300. It's not my favorite, but I was coming from a phone that had bad touch input at 60 Hertz, so it is still a fluidity improvement to me. I was dead set on my next phone being a display, my next phone containing a display rather, that had a refresh rate of at least 90 Hertz, and this does not. But then I also said in my mind, look, you're not going to find another phone selling for $300 new that has a Snapdragon 855, an OLED display, despite it being a 60 Hertz display, despite it only being 1080p, with 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, and something that you could technically put another system image on. So I bit the bullet, so to speak. It's a bit dramatic. It's just buying a phone, but you know. And I have to say, like, I am pretty satisfied with it. It does not fail to do anything I want it to do. I just do not love the fact that the display caps out at 60 Hertz. But look, you can't get everything for $300, and if that's my main gripe, for only paying a third of the price I would have for something that would last me about as long, then I think I'm fine. So back to the system image stuff. So yeah, it did ship with a pretty crappy ZTE skin. It wasn't too far off from stock Android, but it just didn't, it was too janky and not finessed enough for me to use as a daily driver in terms of an operating system. So fortunately, most devices that shipped with recent versions of Android are Project Treble supported, meaning that you can flash modified system images fairly easily. All you have to do is flash TORP recovery and install it almost like you're installing a ROM. There's a bit of a learning curve with knowing the partitioning, and it got a little bit dark, but that's Florida for you, I guess. Humidity making way for cloud cover, you know, typical stuff. And I know that the display is pulsating a little bit, especially when there's more light But that's just characteristically OLED. If you look back to my Nexus XP videos, it's the same thing. It's difficult to mitigate. Regardless, so I flashed, let's see, I'm on Android 10. There was me ranting about low refresh rates on $1,200 Apple smartphones. Let's go to About Phone. I'm on Android 10. I'm running Havoc OS, which is a GSI, or generic system image, which is like a light version of a ROM. It's not as extensive. It doesn't cover all of the bases that a ROM would cover, like a vendor and like audio modules, and it's not quite as extensive. But using a GSI and using a custom ROM are almost indistinguishable in day-to-day usage, with the exception being a greater potential for incompatibility with camera modules and connectivity, which you might have to troubleshoot if you run into those issues. But other than that, it's pretty much like I'm running a ROM. Like, I do have the typical customization options that come with most ROMs. So it is basically a stock version of Android with extra goodies on top, which is always what I like. I'll take it over Oxygen OS any day, but not saying that Oxygen OS, I'm not shitting on Oxygen OS. I'm just saying, for me personally, this is peak Android. Make fun of this if you will. It's not necessarily my final home screen layout. I'm just too lazy, I think, to change it to anything better. I don't think it's bad. I do think the icons go well with the wallpaper. So yeah, I do like the fact that I can basically get this thing to run an AOSP based version of Android, which makes the software it ships with kind of a non-issue, with the exception of updates down the road. So like if I had a 4A, I'd be getting Android 11 already. But if I did get a 4A, I'd probably be flashing GSIs on it too, if not just ROMs in general, because there's an actual developer community behind it, or there will be, because it's still a fairly new device. So yeah, my main issue was the 60 hertz display. It doesn't bother me too much, and I've never owned a smartphone with a high refresh rate display. I have owned an iPad with ProMotion, and I do have a laptop with a 144 hertz monitor, so I am no stranger to high refresh rate displays. I love them for what it's worth. And as is pretty obviously apparent, I would like to hope, I do value the benefits of a high refresh rate display on anything, even smartphones. But still, for $300, I'm not complaining. Or more accurately, I'm slightly complaining. But yeah, my next phone will definitely, I mean, hopefully, by the time I get my next phone, every phone will have at least a refresh rate of 90 hertz, even the budget ones. But we can dream, right? I mean, Apple's going into 2021 shipping 60 hertz displays on their $1,200 phones. So I guess we'll see. Sorry, a little congested. So since this is functionally running an AOSP build of Android, I mean, this thing flies through everything. No slowdowns. The SD835 on my Essential phone was chugging along quite a bit. That and the fact that it only had 4 gigs of RAM made some things a slog, irrespective of the fact that the phone was literally falling apart. It was starting to feel a little dated. But performance with this, I mean, really snappy. I love it. Like, this is better than I could have asked for $300, probably even $400, even given the Pixel 4a, because again, it's a larger phone, it's slimmer, is better looking than the 4a is, even if the 4a arguably has a better looking front because it's a hole punch cutout instead of a teardrop one like this one has. But you can barely tell because I put everything in dark mode, So the Axon 10 has a triple camera system. I just use the main camera. I don't care about whatever the other 2 lenses do. I don't even know. I know one of them has to be wide angle and the other one, I don't know, telephoto. I don't really care. And I use Gcam anyway, so the other cameras aren't even usable. It's only the main camera usable with Gcam. But that's fine with me since ZTE's image processing kind of sucks balls. Like, it's fine by me if the other 2 cameras are not usable, because Google's image processing is infinitely better than anything ZTE coughs up in their camera app. So I'll take the one camera over the three. Still, the photos I'm getting out of it aren't anything too special. It is a definite improvement from my Essential phone, because the Essential phone had a non-sensor, basically. Like, the fact that the Essential phone's camera lays flush with the rest of the phone is good from an aesthetic standpoint, but it's not good from the standpoint of picture quality. So pretty much anything short of a potato would have been an upgrade from the Essential phone in terms of image quality. And I think that's it. Oh, I love Always On Display. Oh, God, I missed having an OLED so much. So I think I'm going to start wrapping it up here. This was a sort of laid back vlog style return video, if you will. This shouldn't signify that I'm going to be making videos regularly, because it's definitely not something I can say with any amount of certainty. Wait, rewind for a second. Was I just insinuating that like this is different from videos I've made in the past? As if my entire presence on YouTube hasn't been making rambly, extensive videos on mundane topics? I almost feel like I went there. But no, I don't think I'm delusional enough to leave that unacknowledged. Not quite. We'll get there eventually. That is if I make another video ever. So because I thought this video wasn't quite sloppy enough, I'm going to take you on a little end of video mini tour of the stuff going on my phone. So this icon pack, let's see. Settings, icons, is viral. I think this was free, or was it the one that I paid 99 cents for? I don't know, but it's either free or 99 cents. But it's a nice looking icon pack. It's not the prettiest, I will say, but it does match this retro-ish wallpaper fairly well. This is Sony Digital Clock Xperia, my go-to clock widget that I think I'll have on my phones until the end of time. In your typical Google launcher fare. This is month calendar widget, of course. If you want to look at my apps, I got a duplicate lawn chair one there. I'm not using lawn chair right now. I just have it installed on my phone. But yeah, the phone is very zippy, zero slowdown. I'm using Android or AOSP gestures that are baked into new versions of Android. Let's see, I do love this blur. I think it looks so cool. And I do have like pink accents to match. I love the 92, 94% screen to body ratio. Even if it's not the best in the industry, it's still a market increase from the Essential phone screen to body ratio, which is kind of wild, because the Essential phone, I think, had an industry-leading 84% when it came out in 2017. So, yeah, I think that's it. If you have any questions about anything, if you're considering getting the Axon 10 for $350, because it's still a decent deal at that price, shoot off in the comments below, or sound off. I'm going to start being more busy in a couple of weeks. So I don't know if I'm going to make any videos between now and the end of the month. But I'm leaving the door open for the possibility. But it was nice having this little check-in status update. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed updating you. Yeah, if you want to follow me on my socials, I do post pretty often, especially on Twitter. So both my Insta and Twitter are at Stared Blanket. If you want to follow me for ironic shit posts and the like. You've just been able to Cyanide, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.